I found my wife's burner phone taped under the sink the same night. She looked me in the eyes and swore on our marriage she'd never lied to me. I'm not dramatic. I don't snoop. I don't jump to conclusions. That's what makes this so hard to write without feeling like an absolute idiot. I'm posting here because I need outside perspective before I do something irreversible, and because if I don't get this out of my head, it's going to rot me from the inside. My wife and I have been married for 11 years. I'm 39. She's 36. No kids yet. Not for lack of trying, or so I thought. From the outside, we're that couple people hate. Good jobs, nice house, predictable routines, zero public drama. We're the ones friends come to for advice. Or used to. Looking back now, the signs weren't subtle. I just didn't want to see them. About 6 months ago, she started changing in ways that didn't line up. Not the cliché she stopped caring stuff. The opposite. She got sharper. Meaner, actually. Everything I did irritated her. The way I chewed. The way I parked. The way I breathed when she was trying to focus. She'd snap, then 5 minutes later act like nothing happened. If I brought it up, she'd sigh and say I was being sensitive. That became her favorite word for me. Sensitive. She also started lying about tiny things. Stuff that didn't matter. Saying she'd already eaten when she hadn't. Claiming she texted me when she clearly didn't. Saying she'd told me about plans that were brand new. When I pointed out inconsistencies, she'd smirk and say, "Wow, you really keep score, huh?" Like I was the problem for noticing reality. At the same time, she became weirdly protective of her privacy. New passcode. Phone always face down. Bathroom door locked, even when showering. If I walked into a room unexpectedly, she'd flinch like a kid caught stealing. When I asked her, calmly, if something was going on, she laughed in my face. Literally laughed. Then said, "God, you sound paranoid. I married a man, not a detective." That sentence stuck. 2 weeks ago, I found out she'd been working late on nights her office was closed. I know because I dropped off paperwork for her coworker and the building was dark. When I mentioned it later, she didn't miss a beat. Told me they'd been meeting off-site. When I asked where, she named a place that had shut down months ago. I confronted her that night. Not angry, not yelling. Just asked her to sit down and tell me the truth. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd stick. Then she did something I still can't get out of my head. She took my hands, looked straight into my face, and said, "I have never cheated on you. I would never betray you like that. You're my husband." I almost believed her. Then, later that same night, the sink clogged. I went to grab the plunger, and that's when I saw it. Something black taped to the inside of the cabinet, wrapped in plastic. At first I thought it was a tool, or a battery pack. It was a phone. Old, cheap, powered off. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it, feeling something inside me go completely still. Not panic, not rage, something colder. Like my body had already accepted what my mind was still trying to deny. I didn't turn it on. Not yet. I taped it back exactly where it was. And I went to bed next to my wife, who curled into me like nothing in the world was wrong, while I lay awake realizing that whatever this was, it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't new. And I knew, with absolute clarity, that if I played this wrong, I'd lose everything. I didn't sleep that night. I pretended to. I breathed slow. I kept my arm around her so she wouldn't feel me pull away. Inside, something had shifted permanently. Not broken, recalibrated. The next morning, she was cheerful. Too cheerful. Singing while making coffee. Asking about my day before it even started. That alone told me everything I needed to know. When someone is lying long-term, they overcorrect. They perform normality like it's a role they might forget the lines to. I waited until she left for work. The second her car backed out of the driveway, I went straight to the kitchen sink. I peeled the tape carefully, like I was disarming a bomb. The phone was lighter than I expected. No case. No SIM tray visible. When I powered it on, it didn't ask for Face ID. No passcode. That alone told me it wasn't meant to be hidden from everyone, just from me. The home screen had one app front and center, a messaging app I'd never seen her use. No contacts saved by name. Just initials. Dates. Threads going back months. I opened the most recent one. Him. Last night was risky. He's starting to notice. Her. He's harmless. He wants to believe me. That sentence felt like a hand closing around my throat. I scrolled. Hotels. Photos cropped carefully to avoid reflections. Voice notes where she laughed in a way I hadn't heard in years. Light. Mocking. Intimate. Complaints about me, about how I'd lost edge, how marriage had made me predictable. One message stood out, burned into my brain. I married him because he was safe, not because he excited me. I sat on the kitchen floor for a long time after that, not crying, just cataloging. Every memory rearranging itself with brutal efficiency. The nights she rejected me, the sudden gym obsession, the new underwear that wasn't for me, the lies stacked on lies, told so casually they'd become reflex. What surprised me wasn't the affair. It was how little remorse there was. I took screenshots of everything, saved audio files, backed them up twice. Then I powered the phone off and put it back exactly where it was. Same tape, same angle, same lie. When she came home that evening, I kissed her hello, asked about her day. She complained about coworkers, about stress, about how exhausting it is to carry everything emotionally. I nodded like a supportive husband while she leaned into me, her phone buzzing in her pocket. That night, I asked her, gently, if she was happy. She paused just long enough to calculate. Of course, she said. Why wouldn't I be? I watched her face while she said it. No hesitation, no guilt, just confidence. That's when I realized something important. Confronting her now would do nothing. She wasn't sorry. She was comfortable. And comfortable liars don't confess, they adapt. So I made a decision that still scares me when I think about it. I stopped reacting. I became quieter, kinder, more absent. I let her think the tension had passed. I let her believe her performance had worked. I even apologized once for being paranoid. She smiled when I said it. That smile told me everything. Because if she thought I was blind, she'd keep going. And if she kept going, she'd make mistakes. I didn't want revenge fueled by anger. I wanted something colder, something permanent. The moment I stopped reacting, she relaxed. It was subtle, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Her shoulders dropped. Her tone softened. She started leaving her phone unattended again, not often, but enough to signal confidence. She thought the storm had passed. She thought I'd folded. That's when the real damage began. She started rewriting our history out loud, casually, over dinner, while folding laundry. She'd say things like, you know, we've always been more like best friends than lovers, or we both kind of checked out years ago. Statements presented as shared memories, even though I knew they were lies. When I didn't argue, she took it as agreement. One night she said, I just feel like I've been carrying this marriage emotionally. I asked, since when? She shrugged. Always. That word again. Always. A weapon disguised as an explanation. She also started testing boundaries. Coming home later. Canceling plans last minute. Once she didn't come home at all and texted at 3:12 a.m., saying she'd crashed at a friend's place because she was too tired to drive. No name. No details. I replied, glad you're safe. That was it. The next morning she watched me closely, waiting for the follow-up. The questions. The anger. When none came, something flickered in her eyes, surprise mixed with relief. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just cheating. She was preparing an exit. The affair wasn't a mistake. It was a transition plan. I started digging, not through her phone, not directly. Through patterns. Through money. Through time. She'd always handled the household finances, and I'd trusted her. That trust turned out to be another convenience. I pulled our bank statements going back a year. There it was. Small withdrawals. Cash. Regular. Always under amounts that would trigger questions. Labeled as groceries. Gas. Errands. But the timing lined up perfectly with her late nights and work trips. She was funding the affair with our marriage. I checked our credit cards next. A hotel chain I'd never stayed at. A restaurant in a part of town she claimed to hate. Jewelry purchased and returned. Over and over, like rehearsals for a final gift. I didn't confront her. I hired a lawyer. Not a shark. A quiet woman in her 50s who didn't interrupt while I spoke. When I showed her the screenshots, she didn't gasp. She didn't react at all. She just nodded and said, "You're lucky you found this before she made her move." That sentence landed hard. She explained things I hadn't even considered. How some spouses line up housing, finances, even narratives before leaving. How infidelity often isn't the end of a marriage. It's the preparation for ending one on their terms. I asked her one question. What do I do? She looked at me for a long moment and said, "You let her think she's winning." So I did. I started talking about the future again. Vacations, renovations, even kids. She didn't commit, but she didn't shut it down either. She liked the security, the backup plan. Me. That night, she had the nerve to tell me she felt closer to me lately. I smiled. Inside, I was already gone. Because once you see that someone is willing to erase you quietly, without guilt, without honesty, there's no one seeing it. And there's no mercy left to give. The strangest part wasn't the anger. It was how calm I felt while lying to her face. Once I understood the rules of the game she was playing, everything made sense. She wasn't reckless anymore. She was strategic. And strategy only works when you believe the other side is unarmed. So I disarmed myself in her eyes. I started asking her opinion again. About paint colors. About weekend plans. About stupid little things she loved having control over. I let her interrupt me. Let her correct me in front of friends. I became smaller on purpose. She loved it. She began treating me the way people treat furniture they plan to replace soon. Careless, dismissive, already imagining the space without it. If I disagreed with her, she'd sigh dramatically and say, "Why are you being like this?" If I went quiet, she'd accuse me of sulking. Every reaction was wrong unless it served her narrative. One night, after a few glasses of wine, she slipped. Not enough to confess. Just enough to reveal contempt. "You know," she said, swirling her glass, "I think people outgrow marriages. Some people just don't evolve." I asked, "And you think I didn't?" She didn't answer right away. Then she smiled. A small, cruel smile. "I think you stopped trying a long time ago." That's when I knew. Even if the affair ended tomorrow, this marriage was already dead. She'd rewritten me into a villain to justify what she was doing. In her version of reality, I deserved this. That realization hurt more than the cheating. Because betrayal is one thing. Dehumanization is another. A week later, I confirmed what I'd suspected. She wasn't just seeing someone. She was seeing him consistently. Same man. Same pattern. Same nights. I found out through her own mouth, though she never meant to tell me. She mentioned a name while half asleep. A slip. Just one syllable. But I caught it. Later, I cross-checked with the burner phone. Same initials. Same voice. Same timing. He wasn't married. He wasn't temporary. He was the upgrade. And here's the part that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. She was planning to leave me right after our anniversary. I know because she booked a one-way flight, for herself. 2 weeks after the date. No return. No discussion. No warning. She hadn't chosen the day yet, but she'd chosen the escape. She just hadn't chosen how to break me. That's when I stopped seeing her as my wife. She became an opponent. I stopped thinking in terms of emotions and started thinking in terms of leverage. What she wanted, what she feared, what she needed to keep intact to feel superior. Her image. She cared deeply about how she was seen. At work, online, among friends. She curated her life like a brand. Strong woman, loyal partner, honest to a fault. I knew then where this would end. Not with yelling, not with tears, with exposure. But not yet. First, I needed her to feel safe. So I surprised her with an anniversary dinner reservation at her favorite place. She was genuinely excited, almost giddy. She posted about it before we even went. Watching her smile at her phone while texting him about how lucky she was to have me, it did something to me. Something dark and focused. That night, when we got home, she kissed me like she hadn't in months. I didn't stop her. I let her believe she still had control over my body, my trust, my future. Because the more comfortable she got, the harder the fall would be. And I wanted the fall to be unforgettable. I used to think revenge was loud. Yelling. Slam doors. Public meltdowns. That kind of thing. I was wrong. Revenge is paperwork. Timelines. Screenshots labeled by date. Silence at the right moments. Smiles when you want to scream. While she was planning her escape, I was building a record. I documented everything, quietly. Every lie. Every late night. Every expense she tried to bury under vague labels. I backed it all up in 3 places. Cloud. External drive. A folder at my lawyer's office with my name typed cleanly on the front. I stopped asking her questions entirely. When someone realizes they're no longer being questioned, they assume they've won. She started getting sloppy. She'd complain about me to friends on speakerphone while I was in the shower. She didn't know I could hear her from the hallway. "He's just predictable," she said once. Nice, but boring. I needed more. Needed. As if loyalty were optional. As if vows had an expiration date. Another time she laughed and said, "I don't even feel guilty anymore. Isn't that wild?" That one stayed with me. Because that's when I understood this wasn't about love or unhappiness. It was entitlement. She believed she deserved a new life without paying for the old one. I met with my lawyer again. She reviewed the flight, the finances, the affair evidence. She didn't sugarcoat anything. If she leaves first, she said, she controls the narrative. If you move first, you control the terms. I asked, what does moving first look like? She slid a document across the table. Divorce filing. Fault-based. Infidelity clearly outlined. Financial misconduct highlighted. Timeline attached. I stared at my own name at the top and felt nothing. That scared me more than the anger ever had. At home, she was glowing. She'd started going to the gym more, buying new clothes, wearing perfume she knew I hated. She'd catch her reflection and smile like she was already gone. One night she said, I think we should start being more honest with each other. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, I agree. Her eyes lit up. She thought this was her opening, the soft launch of her exit speech. But she wasn't ready yet. She still needed my stability, my income, my house, my silence. So she waited, and I let her. I planned the timing carefully. Not impulsive, not emotional, surgical. I chose a Thursday. Ordinary. No drama attached to the date. I wanted it to blindside her. That morning, she kissed me on the cheek before work and said, we should do something fun this weekend. I nodded. Yeah, we should. By noon, my lawyer had filed. By 2 p.m., her credit card access was frozen. By 4 p.m., she was served at work. She didn't come home that night. She called, screaming, crying, accusing me of betrayal. Irony is loud when you don't acknowledge it. You blindsided me, she kept saying. You humiliated me. I listened quietly, then said, you booked a one-way flight. Silence. I added, you just didn't think I was paying attention. She hung up. The next morning, she came home with red eyes and a rehearsed speech. Apologies mixed with blame. Tears timed perfectly. Promises that meant nothing. I was going to tell you, she said. I asked when. She didn't answer. That's when I realized something else. She hadn't just underestimated me. She never thought I was capable of leaving. And that was her biggest mistake. The fallout didn't come all at once. It came in waves. First was denial. She acted like the filing was a misunderstanding, some legal overreaction we could walk back if we just talked like adults. She kept saying things like, people don't throw away 12 years over a mistake, as if the word mistake could stretch far enough to cover months of deception, planning, and contempt. She tried to move back into the bedroom. I told her no. That was the first time she looked genuinely scared. Then came bargaining. She offered therapy, date nights, a reset. She even suggested an open marriage, like that was something you propose after you've already violated every boundary that matters. I chose you in the end, she said, voice trembling. I replied, you chose me when your exit didn't work. That shut her up. She started sleeping on the couch, glued to her phone, probably updating him in real time. I wondered how she was spinning it, how she explained the divorce filing, whether she painted me as controlling, unstable, emotionally absent. I stopped wondering when he showed up at my door. I wasn't home. That part mattered. The neighbor told me later, mid-30s, confident posture, expensive jacket. He rang the bell twice, waited, then left a note tucked under the mat. No name, just a number. She didn't tell me about it. I found the note myself. That told me everything I needed to know. He thought he was stepping into an open space, a clean handoff. He had no idea he was walking into a legal and emotional minefield she'd lied about from day one. I didn't call him. Not yet. At mediation, she finally dropped the mask. She accused me of emotional neglect, of being checked out, of prioritizing work over her. She cried on cue. Even the mediator looked uncomfortable. When it was my turn, I didn't raise my voice. I slid the evidence across the table. The hotel receipts, the flight, the cash withdrawals, the messages, printed, time-stamped, impossible to spin. She stared at the stack like it might explode. That's private, she said weakly. So was our marriage, I replied. The mediator cleared his throat and suggested a break. In the hallway, she snapped. You planned this, she hissed. You humiliated me on purpose. I looked at her and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. You humiliated yourself, I said. I just stopped protecting you. That's when the anger hit her. Real anger. Not tears. Not guilt. Rage at losing control of the story. She started telling mutual friends I was abusive, emotionally manipulative, that she'd been afraid to leave. I didn't respond. I let the truth do the work. Screenshots have a way of cutting through lies. So do timelines. So does consistency. People started asking her questions she couldn't answer. Why the one-way flight? Why the hidden cash? Why the overlap? The support she expected didn't materialize. Invitations dried up. Her work image took a hit, not officially, but socially. The whispers started. Meanwhile, the man she thought was her future stopped returning her calls. Turns out he didn't sign up to be someone's escape plan with legal consequences. He didn't want drama. He didn't want court dates. He definitely didn't want to be labeled the other guy. She lost him faster than she lost me. One night she sat across from me at the kitchen table, eyes hollow, hands shaking. "I have nothing now," she said. I didn't argue, because for the first time, she was telling the truth. Watching someone realize they've burned every bridge is unsettling. Not satisfying the way movies make it look. It's quieter, slower, like a building collapsing inward instead of exploding. She stopped fighting me and started fighting reality. Her tone changed. No more accusations. No more rehearsed speeches. Just exhaustion. She asked if we could be friends. That one almost made me laugh. "Friends don't do this to each other," I said. She nodded, like she already knew. The house felt different. Emptier, even with both of us still there. She packed in silence. No music. No phone calls. No performative sadness. Just boxes and the sound of tape tearing. I thought I'd feel relief watching her leave. Instead, I felt something colder. Closure. At the final court hearing, everything moved fast. Too fast for her. She stumbled through answers. Contradicted herself. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Infidelity. Financial misconduct. Intent to abandon the marital home. Words carry weight when they're written into legal record. The ruling wasn't dramatic. It was decisive. She didn't get the clean break she wanted. No heroic exit. No fresh start funded by my silence. She left with what was fair, nothing more. Outside the courthouse, she finally broke. She cried in a way I hadn't seen since the early years. No mascara-running theatrics. Just quiet, broken sobs. She said my name like it might save her. I didn't stay. Because here's the thing no one tells you. Staying for their pain doesn't heal yours. Weeks passed. Then months. People stopped asking questions. Life filled in the space she left behind. Slowly, I started sleeping through the night again. Eating regularly. Breathing without that constant pressure in my chest. One afternoon, I ran into a mutual friend. She hesitated before speaking, like she was choosing her words carefully. "She's not doing great," she said. I nodded. That was all. Later that night, I got a message from an unknown number. "I didn't mean to destroy us. I just didn't think you'd let me go." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because the truth was simpler than she wanted to admit. She didn't think I'd choose myself. And choosing myself, that was the real betrayal in her eyes. But for me, it was the first honest thing I'd done in years. Healing doesn't arrive like an apology. It creeps in quietly, disguised as routine. At first, it was small things. Making coffee exactly how I liked it without worrying if the smell annoyed her. Leaving the lights on. Turning the TV off mid-episode because I felt like reading instead. No negotiations. No tension. Just choice. Then it got deeper. I started noticing how much of myself I'd edited down over the years. How often I'd swallowed words to keep the peace. How I'd mistaken endurance for loyalty. I hadn't just lost a wife. I'd lost track of who I was trying to be with her. The anger faded faster than I expected. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because carrying her choices was exhausting. She tried again a month later. This time by email. Longer. More careful. Full of self-awareness she'd clearly borrowed from therapy language. She wrote about childhood wounds. Fear of abandonment. How the affair wasn't about him and wasn't against me. That line almost impressed me. Almost. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to my lawyer and asked if I needed to worry about anything. She replied with one sentence. "No, you're free." That word, free, hit harder than love ever had. I sold the house. Too many ghosts. Too many echoes of conversations that never happened. I moved into a smaller place closer to work. Less space, more peace. I ran into her once after that. Completely by accident. Grocery store. Frozen foods aisle. She looked older. Not in years, just in weight. Like life had pressed down on her without resistance. She noticed me at the same time I noticed her. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled. A reflex. The old mask. Hey, she said softly. Hey. She started to say something else. Stopped. Swallowed. I'm trying to do better, she said. I believed her. That didn't change anything. I hope you do, I replied. We stood there in silence, surrounded by strangers, two people who once knew each other's breathing patterns now reduced to small talk and distance. When I walked away, I didn't feel victorious. I felt done. That night, I realized something important, something I wish I'd known earlier. Closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from no longer needing them. I stopped checking her social media, stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped wondering what I could have done differently. Because the truth was uncomfortable but clear. A loyal partner doesn't need to be managed. An honest spouse doesn't need surveillance. And love that requires self-erasure isn't love, it's control. I didn't lose my marriage. I survived it. And for the first time since all of this began, that felt like enough. Freedom, though, isn't a switch you flip. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first. You wake up one morning, and the tension in your shoulders, the one you didn't even know was constant, has lifted. The gnawing feeling in your gut that something's off? Gone. Replaced by the quiet knowledge that you're no longer someone else's background noise. You exist for yourself now. I started rebuilding intentionally, not out of spite, not to win, but to reclaim my life. I joined a gym, reconnected with friends I'd drifted from, even picked up painting again, something I'd abandoned because it didn't fit into our curated life together. Everything I'd let slip through my fingers during her manipulations, I grabbed back. The tricky part? People don't always get it. They ask, are you okay? Or do you miss her? And there's a split second where you have to decide how honest to be. I stopped lying, but I also stopped explaining. My life didn't require her validation anymore. She reached out one last time, a casual DM on a platform we'd never used. Just a simple, I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it without a second thought. Happiness isn't about telling the person who betrayed you that you're fine. It's about proving it to yourself, day after day, in little choices that nobody sees. Weeks later, I realized I wasn't thinking about her at all. Not constantly, not obsessively, not even grudgingly. Her absence was quiet, but it was final. The person I had been with her, the one who tiptoed around her moods, second-guessed every action, doubted every instinct, was gone. In its place was someone sharper, calmer, far more attuned to reality. And that's when the subtle, psychological victory set in. She had built a world around control, manipulation, and lies. I had quietly, deliberately dismantled it without her ever realizing the extent of what had slipped through her fingers. It wasn't dramatic. There were no confrontations, no angry texts, no viral social media reveals. Just one simple truth. I walked away whole. And that truth resonated louder than any revenge she could have imagined. Because the real sting for someone like her isn't public humiliation. It's invisibility. It's knowing she once had power over me, and now, in my silence, she has none. The hardest lesson? Sometimes the ultimate retribution isn't what you do to them. It's what you refuse to let them do to you. Looking back now, I see it all with a clarity I didn't have during the chaos. The signs were there from the start. The small lies, the unexplained trips, the sudden obsession with her phone. I ignored them at first because I wanted to believe, because I trusted, because I loved. And that's what makes betrayal so devastating. It's not just the act. It's the erosion of your reality, the slow recalibration of every memory you thought was solid. I won't lie. There were nights I lay awake replaying every conversation, every laugh, every touch, wondering how I didn't notice sooner, wondering if I could have prevented it, wondering if, somewhere deep inside, I had failed. But those nights faded. They had to fade, because holding on to them only chained me to her deception. Now, I have a different life. A life where I don't check messages obsessively, don't count footsteps, don't calculate excuses. A life where I make decisions for me, and only me. I travel, I meet new people, I create, I breathe. And every day I remind myself, the betrayal was her choice. My recovery is mine. I learned that justice doesn't always arrive in a courtroom or a public spectacle. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, in the form of self-possession, of rebuilding, of moving forward without her in the picture. I learned that love without respect isn't love at all. That patience and trust are gifts, and that when they're weaponized against you, the only proper response is reclamation, not vengeance. If there's one piece of advice I can offer to anyone reading this, it's this. Notice the signs. Trust your instincts. Protect your boundaries. And, most importantly, never lose yourself trying to maintain someone else's illusion. Because when betrayal comes, and it often does, it isn't the cheating itself that breaks you. It's the quiet surrender of your own identity in the process. I don't think about her much anymore. She's a footnote in my history, a cautionary tale I carry privately. And that's enough. Because surviving someone like her isn't about revenge. It's about rising above. I'm not just free. I'm whole. And that feels better than anything I could have imagined while living in the shadow of lies.